the gospel, the good news of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Hallelujah, 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 he is risen. Hallelujah, 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 he is Lord. Hallelujah, 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 he is risen. Hallelujah, hallelujah, he is Lord.
Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. And he shall raise you up, and God will give you strength, and God will give you faith, and God will give you love. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. To be transformed through an encounter with the Spirit of truth and the love of God. To be transformed by the Spirit of truth and the love of God. That is our mission statement here at the Newman Center. And especially for those of you who are tuning in and new to the university, we want you to hear that right up front. We want this special place of St. Thomas More Catholic Newman Center to be a place of transformation. After all, isn't that what your university adventure is all about? It's about transformation. We come into an institute of higher learning to be transformed intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. In these days of continuing pandemic, we continue to be transformed in other ways, right? More anxious, more fearful, wondering how everything will flow. And I know at the university they're trying very, very hard to figure it all out. How will in-person work and in-person flex and where do you stand? And I was walking across the campus and I see all these tents. What allows us to be able to navigate transformation that creates anxiety is transformation that creates freedom. And today's readings are full of that. If you were listening to that second reading, wasn't it beautiful? How inscrutable, God. We can't figure God out. But all God continues to do in our life is to offer us freedom and transformation if we're willing to receive it. But we have to let go. Isn't that one of the hardest things in the world? Especially for us who are high J's on the Myers-Briggs. We want it all in a row, don't we? To let go is the most scary thing in the world. That's anxiety producing, because if I'm not holding on to it, how's it going to get done? And yet, as a people of faith, we're called to hear that call of God, that He's with us in all the parts of our life that we manage beautifully, but the parts of life that are disruptive. In today's first reading, we are dealing with a community of people who have been disrupted. The Hebrews, the Israelites, have fallen into slavery. And why is that? Because they stepped further and further and further away from that covenant of God. And they became very, very entranced by lots of other things. And when you and I become entranced by lots of other things, it's not that other things are bad, but we have to have the discernment to be able to figure out what other things transform us and what other things enslave us. So the more they got transformed by unhealthy things, unhealthy gods, unhealthy practices, the more they fell in exile. And kingdoms came in and took them into slavery and controlled them. And so today, we arrive in this book of Isaiah to an experience where Jerusalem is under attack. The kingdom has fallen, and the other forces are basically mandating how they do everything, how they eat, how they live, and eclipsing even how they worship. And so one of the officials of the palace, who we heard about in that first reading, has been given this stewardship by the oppressors over the people. And if you read just back a little bit before, how does he rule? Not well. He's in it for himself. He wants to build a tomb for himself one day when he dies in a very prominent place in Jerusalem. He's not so much concerned about the people. And so the prophet Isaiah does what? He comes and he calls them out. And he says, God is going to take away from you the great responsibility and stewardship that you've been given over people, and he's going to give it to someone else. And that's what God does in our life. So people of God, when you and I get worried, if God still exists, God does. But we can't let our anxiety, when things don't always flow as easily as we want them to flow, to be the final cause. We have to go deeper to that place where God calls us to figure out how do we untie knots. And then when God calls into this new stewardship, what does he say? To you I'm going to give the key. And it was actually a physical key to the palace. So when you unlock administrative doors, they're going to truly be unlocked. When you make decisions that affect people, they're going to be affected. But with great power comes what? Spider-Man fans? Responsibility, not more power. Responsible stewardship. And that's what we're hearing about in that first reading. The successor of Shalom becomes the steward that is called to responsibility, called to reflect the love and care of God to a people who are feeling anxious. How beautifully this mirrors our gospel reading today, because if you read just a little bit before this gospel, that Jesus has just performed the great miracle of the loaves. People are coming and wanting to be close to Jesus, and the disciples are getting worried because all these people are sticking around and there's no food, and how can they feed them? Jesus performs a great miracle. But just a few lines later, they forget. They absolutely, positively forget. And so Jesus asked them a very profound question. You've been walking with me. You've been seeing what I've been doing. You've been seeing the effect that I've been having on people. So who are people saying that I am? And they rattle off the list. Well, some are saying you're kind of maybe one of those old prophets that's come back. But I love it. He asked them. This is what other people are saying. But who do you, the people that are walking with me, listening to me, being formed by me, in relationship with me, who do you see that I am? And in Mark's version of this, Peter just says, you are the Messiah. You are the one who is promised to come. And it ends there. But today we have Matthew's version. And in Matthew's gospel, you always have to keep in mind what? Matthew always wants to take us back to the Mosaic law. He wants to take everything that was written about Jesus and everything that Jesus did. He wants to connect it to the law of Moses, so that people can see that Jesus truly has an authority that's not based on another human person, that comes from God. And that's why in Matthew's version, he says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And that is very significant, because when you and I are struggling with anxiety, it's great to come and talk to Sister Angelica. She's pretty cool, or Manny, or Father Tom, who'll probably put you to work moving rocks, or Sister Mary V, or Tom Booth, or Father Pius, or even myself. We're great people. But we're not God. We're not God. And so every once in a while, when you and I pray, we have to realize and cultivate that even though we don't always have the power to move mountains, God does. And when we allow our relationship with God to truly, deeply marinate and to become something true, that's what gives us a confidence to be able to navigate the different storms of life. And that's why Peter doesn't, in Matthew's version, he doesn't just say, you are this long-awaited Messiah who's going to come and be a deliverer. He goes a step further. He makes a statement of faith. Not only are you this coming political Messiah, but you are the Son of the living God. And that predicates further what the Messiah came to do. Not just to heal the political ills of a community, but to heal humanity at the very depths. Misunderstanding, injustice, hatred. That's what the Messiah came to heal. And that's what you and I are baptized into. So when we call God our loving Father, our loving parent, that's who we're talking to. Someone who has the ability to transform our lives, no matter what it is. So as we enter into these first weeks of our new semester, again, there is lots of anxiety. Let's all ask the question, who really is Jesus? Is he simply a person that'll pat me on the back? But is he the Son of the living God, who has the ability to do what, people of God? Transform us through an encounter with the Spirit of truth and the love of God. We just have to be humble. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. And he will raise you up higher and higher, and he will raise you up truer and truer, and he will raise